Released in the year 2000, The BoondockSaints is a classic action-packed crime gangster tale about two Irish twin brothers, Connor and Murphy McManus, played by Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flannery, who live in Boston making ends meet working in a meat factory. However, after killing a couple of Russian gangsters in self-defense, the McManus twins believe that they get a calling from God for them to become vigilantes and to destroy some of the city's most violent criminals. Their newfound trail of carnage comes to the attention of Special Agent Smecker, played by Willem Dafoe, who tries to understand the method of the madness with each crime scene that he attends. And to complicate matters, Papa Joe, the biggest gangster in the city, hires notorious hitman the Duke, played by Billy Connolly, to track down whoever is killing off the criminals and to destroy them. The background story of the BoondockSaints is very much the story of the movie's writer and director Troy Duffy, as it's the story of his rise to riches and then sudden downfall. So to try and understand what happened in the making of this great movie, we are going to look into 10 things that you didn't know about the BoondockSaints. So, let's check it out. Number 10. It was inspired by a real-life incident. The BoondockSaints is the brainchild of musician Troy Duffy. Duffy's inspiration for the BoondockSaints happened when he was working as a bartender and bouncer for an LA night spot, where, to his horror, he saw drug dealers pickpocketing money from a dead boy laying in the street. This affected Duffy so much, he wrote a script about two brothers sick of the corruption and evil in society, taking matters into their own hands and cleansing the city's mean streets. Duffy had never written a script before, and he had started to pitch his idea to movie studios, and there was a lot of buzz, as some studios were excited about the next biggest movie coming from a bartender who was new to the business, who might just be the next Quentin Tarantino. And there was one studio in particular who was very interested. And it's here that things get a little awkward. Number 9. The BoondockSaints was picked up and then dropped by a major movie studio. Yep, Miramax struck a deal with Duffy to distribute the BoondockSaints. Now, it's not really easy to talk about Miramax these days, mainly because of its producer and co-founder who shall not be named. But yeah, back in the late 90s, Miramax was a huge deal, producing hits such as Pulp Fiction and Shakespeare in Love. And the company was also in a bidding war with Paramount Pictures, where he who shall not be named offered Duffy $450,000, as well as being the movie's writer and director, as well as buying the bar, Jay Sloan's, that he was working in at the time, and giving him co-ownership of the establishment, as well as signing on Duffy's band, The Brood, to make an album for the movie's soundtrack. With all these grand riches coming on all of a sudden out of the blue, you can imagine the 26-year-old was very happy with this achievement, but it may have gotten to his head a little too much. Number 8. Then the deal collapsed. It's been stated that Duffy, at this stage, was a little difficult to communicate with, to say the least, and that his ego got the better of him, making him unpleasant to be around and near impossible to work with. Now, I'm not pointing fingers. I wasn't there, so I don't know the full story. After all, at the time, he was very young and, maybe not fully matured yet. And given these huge, life-changing, massive opportunities, heck, that will probably get to many 26-year-olds' heads. Miramax gave the BoondockSaints a budget of $15 million, with the shoot to begin in December 1997. And Duffy went to several meetings at Miramax to discuss the movie's progress. However, due to issues involving casting and filming locations, and possibly Duffy's ego, Miramax pulled out of the project, leaving Duffy back to square one. And with all the chatter of the difficulties that were taking place behind the scenes, now no studio was really interested in the movie, where he was supposedly blacklisted. Yeah, damn. Talk about 1 minute having everything, and then having nothing. Number 7. The BoondockSaints then became an independent production. With the BoondockSaints now without a deal or production company, along with negative word of mouth circulating in Hollywood, it would have seemed that Duffy's dream had hit rock bottom, and that the BoondockSaints was never going to be a big production. So independent studio, Franchise Pictures, came on board to finance the movie, of which the project now had a budget of $6 million, as opposed to the $15 million Miramax were going to pay. Under Miramax's watch, the movie was going to be filmed in Boston, where the story was set, but with Franchise Pictures, most of the movie was actually filmed in Toronto, Canada. And to be fair, for its small budget, the movie looks great, and you would think that having its budget cut would lead to a less ambitious movie. But still, on the screen, the movie looks larger than life, and like any other big budgeted gangster movie of that time. Not to mention that the movie's shoot only took a mere 32 days. Number 6. Casting possibilities. Duffy's original vision for the McManus twins was to be played by Mark Wahlberg and Stephen Dorff, but Wahlberg chose to star in Boogie Nights, and Dorff went on to star in Blade. Duffy also met up with a young Ewan McGregor to possibly star in the movie, but their meeting apparently ended in a heated argument, so yeah, that never happened. Other actors considered for the parts include Brandon Fraser and Nicky Katt, but it was ultimately a pre-Walking Dead Norman Reedus and Powder star Sean Patrick Flannery who were cast as the movie's two main leads. As for the role of quirky FBI agent Paul Smecker, Duffy's original choice for the part was Kenneth Branagh, but that didn't turn out, so he then sought after Patrick Swayze for the role. When the movie was under the helm of Miramax, their choice for the part was Sylvester Stallone, till the part was cast with the legendary Willem Dafoe, who gives a totally unique performance in the role. Billy Connolly was always Duffy's first choice for the Duke, which he agreed. Comedian David Della Rocco was cast as the funny man in a hilarious and enthusiastic performance. And even Ron Jeremy turns up playing a seedy gangster. All this talk of the human stars in the BoondockSaints, let's not forget, of course, the cat. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Number 5. Deleted character. The BoondockSaints mainly focuses on the McManus twins, Connor and Murphy, with no real in-depth backstory or close family around them, suggesting that they have made it out in the world on their own, until the end when they find out that the Duke is their long-lost father. However, originally the script was going to feature the twins' mother, Annabelle McManus, and supposedly some of the movie was going to be narrated by her, which could have made the BoondockSaints feel like a completely different film, but the character was ultimately removed from the movie. The mother isn't the only deleted aspect of the BoondockSaints, as there apparently was going to be a BoondockSaints video game, which, when you think about it, would have been awesome, but it was scrapped. Number 4. The morally questionable superhero philosophy. The movie ends somewhat divisively, with the question being posed: are the BoondockSaints saviors of the city, whom are determined to kill criminals and to keep the streets safer, or are they themselves no better than the criminals they kill, what with their use of violence and brutality? This is a question often put forth in superhero stories and mythologies, particularly Batman and the Watchmen. It's the question: are they themselves criminals? And do they have the right to take the law into their own hands? And what makes them better than those that they judge? Heck, the movie even ends with a montage of average people on the street saying what they think of the BoondockSaints, with half the people claiming that they are great and do a good job, and the other half stating that they are no better than the violent criminals that they attack. And interestingly, a similar scene was then shot several years later in Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. I think this was a brave move by Duffy, as it would have been easy to take the whole "the Saints are the good guys and that's all there is to it" approach, but in questioning them and asking are they heroes or murderers leaves for a much more interesting story open to discussion and interpretation. Number 3. Release. The BoondockSaints was released in the US on January 2000, with an extremely limited release, only being released in 5 cinemas, with its theatrical run only lasting a week. and only bringing in just over $30,000, nowhere near making back its $6 million budget. Not even the movie's theatrical poster was particularly special, with it looking bland and not saying much about the movie. Even here in Australia it was given a weird poster, showing the McManus twins with Willem Dafoe's giant head in the background, as if it's screaming, "Hey, Willem Dafoe is in this movie, you should totally watch it." According to Duffy, the reason the BoondockSaints had such a limited release is because it came out in the wake of the Columbine tragedy, and I guess at that time a movie about two guys getting weapons and heading out on killing sprees wasn't exactly the flavour of the month. In fact, in its original release, many of the movie's violent scenes had to be cut or trimmed. Duffy himself even funded some of the screenings with the help of Blockbuster Video, who also helped with the BoondockSaints video release, which thanks to word of mouth managed to gain some momentum. A similar thing that would go on to happen with Tommy Wiseau's The Room. However, it must be noted that when the movie was released in Japan, it was a massive hit, so there's always that. Number 2, reception. When the movie came out, it wasn't exactly embraced by critics. Many critics complained that the movie was ugly and violent, with the BoondockSaints often being compared to the works of Quentin Tarantino, particularly Reservoir Dogs, only it was stated that it was not as good. Variety magazine even labelled it as a hipster crime movie. However, all the unimpressed critics aside, the movie really resonated with audiences. Its home media release is where it really took off, as it just seemed to really strike a chord with its viewers. The movie has gone on to become a cult classic and a celebrated movie in the crime genre, to which by popular demand in 2009 a long-awaited sequel came out called BoondockSaints 2 All Saints Day, but that's a movie for another video. We've seen this time and time again on this show, where every once in a while we'll get a movie that the critics hate but the audience love. I guess the critics and the audience have different perspectives on vigilantism. Number 1, there was a damning documentary made about the making of the BoondockSaints. In 2003, a documentary came out called Overnight, which focused on Troy Duffy's overnight success when he scored a contract with Miramax, as well as co-ownership of the bar Jay Sloan's, along with also focusing on his life with his band. And the documentary famously shows Duffy in a negative light, displaying him with an inflated ego, with traces of narcissism. The movie focuses on his behaviour becoming his downfall, as he loses his contract with Miramax and other losses. The movie was directed by filmmaker Tony Montana, as he chronicles and films the events that took place at that time. But I think it's also important to remember that there are two sides to a story. Duffy explained that the behaviour seen in the documentary was the exception, not the rule, meaning that the film only focused on the worst of him and the moments where he wasn't at his best. And he also expressed that when the documentary was filmed, it was the most tumultuous stage of his life, which also has to be taken into account for his behaviour. And in the grand scheme of things, Duffy hasn't ended up looking anywhere near as bad as that producer who shall not be named, who was supposedly responsible for Duffy's blacklist in the first place. Not that I'm excusing his behaviour that we see in the documentary or anything, but yeah, I'm more taking a non-biased approach in saying that I wasn't there, so who knows what happened when the cameras weren't rolling. Whether you think that Duffy is a nice guy or not a nice guy, one thing is for sure, the BoondockSaints is a masterpiece, and to me it's the final product that counts. Although he may have been a bit of a dick, he gave us a great movie, a movie that many people love and adore. And just remember, if there was a documentary about, say, I don't know, James Cameron making one of his older movies, do you think that that documentary would put him in a positive light? Anyway, I'm Minty, and seriously, where is that BoondockSaints 3? See ya!